Amos Brown loves the trees, loves going to school, loves cartwheeling in the breeze. But one morning as he was getting ready to play, his mom said, "Amos, I'm sorry, but we have to stay inside today."
That was the new children's book, Rainbows in Windows, that explains the global pandemic we're living in to children, read by Oscar-winning actor Donald Sutherland. There are already numerous books for young people published in response to the Covid-19 health crisis, and I'm joined now by the author and illustrator Helen Paddock, who created My Hero Is You. Hello, Helen.
Hi, thanks for having me here today.
It's a pleasure to have you. Now, tell us about this book.
My Hero Is You is a collaboration brought together by multiple UN agencies. The WHO wanted to respond with a story that could somehow address the fears of children and caregivers during this really unprecedented time. So trying to raise certain awareness of stress management techniques, and also just trying to answer some of the questions that children and parents might have right now about the coronavirus. So this kind of magical story was created and has now been translated into over 130 languages, which we're really happy about.
And children's literature has a long history of exploring difficult topics. Just look at gruesome fairy tales that go back hundreds of years. Why are books like this important, do you think?
I think stories have always been used to try and help people come to terms with life and difficulty. And obviously, the coronavirus is perhaps confronting us with things a lot of us have never had to confront before, like death and loss and self-isolation, literally. Finding ways to package important information is really important.
Tell us a little bit about the story then.
So the story is about Sarah, who is talking to her mum, who's the best scientist in the world, about the coronavirus. And her mum basically says to her, children can also help in this crisis. You can do, there are things you can do to stay safe. And the book sort of starts to explore those things. So Sarah's lying in bed at night. This magical creature, Ario, appears to her at night and asks her basically, what do you need? And she says, well, I need something that can fly. I need something with a big voice. And he sort of appears and they fly around the world collecting stories from lots of different children in lots of different contexts, from sort of country houses to refugee camps in lots of different countries. The story was created based on the real fears and anxieties of children and caregivers, which were collected in a survey carried out by the International Federation of the Red Cross. So it was a very kind of collaborative story, and I hope the story reflects some of those questions and fears these real children had in over 140 countries, I think the survey was carried out in.
And the information that we're getting about the coronavirus, about the health situation, it seems to be changing all of the time. How difficult or easy was that then when you were creating this book?
I think when we started, it was when the virus is really starting to take to sort of take its toll. And a big fear was the sort of spread of information, and people just wanted to have the right information to share, especially I think parents with their children, teachers with their students. One of the big things that kept coming up was the WHO advice was in the story was that people should keep at least 1 meter apart. And as the story was translated in multiple different contexts in different languages, a lot of the translators would say, our government says 2 meters or 4 meters. So just trying to maintain a reassuring level of correct information was a really important, that was a really important part of our process.
Okay. Helen, thank you so much for joining us. It's been a pleasure to have you on the show. Now, the best of these books address children not just as people who might fall ill, but as active agents in the fight against COVID-19. Some others include The Princess in Black and The Case of the Coronavirus. Now, The Princess in Black is an existing series with 7 books published since 2014 and more than 1 million copies. There's also Coronavirus, a book for children written in consultation with an infectious diseases specialist and illustrated by Axel Scheffler of the Gruffalo. With countries across the globe in lockdown and public life at a standstill, more than 1.5 billion children are out of school. Homeschooling means many of us have been reading a great deal to our children in recent days. Luckily, we've had a bit of help.
Are you ready? Here we go. Llama Llama, red pajama, reads a story with his mama. Mama kisses baby's hair. Mama Llama goes downstairs.
Multi-syllable words that sounded like songs. Guacamole, kaleidoscope, wonderful, geometry, symphony.
Well, I'm joined by Carrie Fox and her daughter, 10-year-old Sophia from Maryland in the US, who's released a book, Adventures in Kindness, last month, and the British writer and author of 6 children's books, Philip Womack from London. Hello to all of you. Now, Carrie and Sophia, there are lots of ideas out there about being creative and safe and healthy during this health crisis, but your book talks about something else. It talks about kindness. Tell us about it.
You know, when we started to write this book, we found out that there were a lot of books like this, but most of them are just lists. They give you long lists of things to do that are ways to be kind, but they don't actually go into the why that's important. So what we did is spend the last year kind of digging into a lot of issues and looked behind them and started to build adventures to actually practice kindness. And so the book is an action adventure book, which means there are 52 adventures that kids and their families can take on. After each adventure, there's a journal page that a child can actually go in and talk about how that adventure made them feel, maybe who they completed the adventure with, as a way to really have that practice stay with them over time.
And Sophia, why did you want to make this book?
Well, lots of places in Maryland, you have to be a certain age to go to them. Like Manna Food Center, you have to be at least 14. But in our book, you can do things around your neighborhood and you don't have to be a certain age. You can just kind of do them to do fun, keep you busy, or do something for your world to make a difference.
Tell us a few more examples from the book of things we can do to be kinder.
There's something in the book called the Mix It Up Day at lunch, where you sit with someone else at school or at work and you talk to them and you try and make a new friend.
There's another one around expanding your reading list. And actually, as we're coming into summertime and as children and parents are thinking about what this summer will look like as compared to other summers, we have a complete list of books that are actually in the appendix of our book that are focused on challenging the types of authors or content that you read. So we're right now focused on, as a family, building racially conscious kids. And so we're actually launching a book club as part of Adventures in Kindness for kids who want to really expand their reading list and spend some time over the summer reading specifically books from Black authors and featuring Black and brown main characters. So that's an adventure that will be going on this summer.
Sounds absolutely wonderful. It looks wonderful as well. And we've actually been speaking to people and children around Paris about their favourite lockdown reads. Take a listen.
Moi, j'ai beaucoup lu d'Harry Potter. J'ai commencé le chat fantôme.
On avait un besoin avec nous de lire, avec les enfants, de lire des histoires régulièrement pour s'évader un peu, de voyager, quoi.
J'ai lu beaucoup de fois à mon petit frère des livres qui l'intéressent, des livres de petits bébés.
Valentine, elle n'était pas très intéressée par les jouets, donc on avait beaucoup de moments à partager. C'était la lecture, l'activité la plus principale.
On lit dans l'histoire des grands dinosaures, genre les tyrannosaures.
Well, while it's important to educate children and talk to them about what's been going on, many of us actually want to just be transported somewhere else. And at these times, that's why we need authors like Philip Womack. Philip, hello.
Good afternoon.
Now, tell us about your new book, The Arrow of Apollo.
So The Arrow of Apollo is set in the ancient world, and it's set at a time when the Greek gods are leaving the planet. They've grown a little bored with mortals, and they've decided to depart to other planets, leaving behind a space which can be filled by a terrifying ancient being who's called Python. And so 3 children, who are all the children of heroes that you might know from mythology, such as Aeneas or Orestes, and then there's Dido's niece. They all must come together from different parts of the Mediterranean to find the magical arrow of Apollo, which is the only thing that can slay Python.
Philip, what do you think the Romans and the ancient Greeks can teach us about the times we're living in now?
I think that's a very interesting question. I think they can teach us a lot. I think it's really important to look at the past and to see that people were always people. I mean, in many respects, they were very much like us. If you read Cicero, for instance, you'll see that his thoughts are very much like any sort of liberal person today might be. I mean, there are obviously many moments when they are very alien to us, but almost in seeing that alienness, you can see what makes us more human, more humane, and even more kind, actually, which relates to the book that we've just been talking about.
You've written 6 successful children's books already, so that makes you a bit of an expert. What makes a good children's book?
You're very kind to say that I'm an expert. I think what I've always tried to do with my fiction is to expand the horizons, the imaginative horizons of a child, particularly in relation to the stories that have gone before. So my stories are always based on myths and legends. I've used Mallory, I've used Greek myth, I've used English folk tales, and I'm always interested in seeing how those stories underpin what goes on today, and how children can access those stories, particularly with Greek myth, which I think is very, very exciting. It's a kind of wide, beautiful world that should be open to all children of all kinds. And so I'm trying to kind of find a way in to that store of stories, which is both accessible and exciting.
One of the runaway successes of lockdown on Netflix was The Willoughbys, based on Lois Lowry's children's book. Have either of you seen it?
We have, and enjoyed it very much.
I haven't seen it yet. It's been watched by more than 230 million people. Philip, thank you so much for joining us. Carrie and Sophia, thank you for joining us as well. Stay safe. See you next time.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
My duty is to look after you guys.
All I wanted was a great family.
You have a great family. They need you, and you need them. It's a candy factory.
Well, life's a bitter treat without someone sweet to share it with.
What are you feeding her?
It's the dawn of a new source of pollution linked to the coronavirus. Masks and gloves discarded on roads and sidewalks, many of them already making their way to the seafloor. But what if we could prolong the life of these disposable objects? That's this week on Down to Earth.
Down to Earth on France 24 and France24.com.